Good morning, everybody, and welcome. My name is Al Smith. I'm the President and CEO of the Greater Fresno Area Chamber of Commerce, and we want to welcome you this morning to our little Eggs and Issues. This is our periodic get-together throughout the year to sort of get up close and personal with our elected officials and find out what's on their mind. We cannot do these things, as you know, most of the time without some outside support. The ticket for this thing would be a lot higher if it were not for some of the members of our chamber stepping forward and helping underwrite it. And so this morning, this breakfast is being underwritten by the great folks from Fresno First Bank. We will be looking at government from the federal level this morning. I'm sure there might be some local issues that might want to be discussed. But Jeff Denham is here to join us at our table and talk to us a little bit about what's going on in Washington and some of the things that impact us. It would be appropriate, I think, to acknowledge a couple of special guests we have in the room, some of our elected officials, and representing Assemblyperson Linda Haldeman, Christine Caprillion. Christine, where are you? Back there in the back? Okay. And Tal Leslie from Valadeo's office. Where are you, Tal? There you go. Thank you very much. And also from Chick-Chancellor Tribal Council, member Nancy Ayala. I was close. I'm Smith, remember. Anything more than two syllables, I got a problem with. And also Dora Jones from the Chick-Chancellor Tribal Council. Thank you very much for coming with us today. We are down to our main program. Let me introduce to you our keynote speaker this morning. His name is Jeff Denham. You know him. He represents the 19th District of California in the U.S. House of Representatives. His district covers parts of Fresno, Madera, Mariposa, Tuolumne, and Stanislaus counties. He was elected in November of 2010. He is serving his first term in the 112th session of Congress. His public service career began in the United States Air Force. 16 years he was on active duty and reserve. He fought in Operation Desert Storm, Operation Restore Hope in Iraq and Somalia, respectively. Graduated from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. He worked in the agricultural industry for years and is an almond rancher and an entrepreneur and understands the critical importance of the agribusiness, obviously, for this area. He was a state senator from 2002 to 2010, and he spent a great deal of his time focused on balancing runaway budgets in Sacramento, as well as other issues. Foremost, of course, he is a family man. He and Sonia have two children. They've been married 17 years. In his new position as U.S. Congressman, he has continued to address long-term interests of California's agricultural business, working towards that wonderful solution of water that we've all grown to know and love, and transportation interests throughout California. And of course, he is very, very active in the rights of our military, past and present. Welcome, if you will, Congressman Jeff Denham.
Well, thank you and good morning. I'm going to try to go through this pretty quick this morning because I really want to spend a lot of time answering your questions. Obviously, a lot going on, a lot of concern, especially a lot of concern here at home with our challenges. And you keep hearing about more jobs, but we continue to see the high unemployment rate here that has everybody frustrated and concerned. But if there's one thing I leave you with this morning, it's one word that I feel is important as I've looked at my businesses, is certainty. Before I go out and plant any more almonds, before I buy any more property, I want certainty. I want to know that I'm going to have a consistent water supply. I want to know that I'm going to be able to export my almonds. I want to know that there's going to be certainty in the labor market and be able to harvest my almonds and be able to do it in such a way that I'm not going to be fined by the EPA or any other regulatory agency every time I put a plow into the ground or equipment back out on the road. On my plastics company, the same thing. I want certainty. I want to be able to, before I go out and hire any more employees, I want to know that I'm going to be able to keep those employees. That the rules aren't going to be changed once I hire somebody, whether it's a healthcare cost or any of the other costs associated with hiring a new employee. I want the certainty so I can plan long term, and that commitment that I'm going to make to every new employee as I go out and hire them. Because I know that not only am I hiring that new employee, but that family is now depending on that new job that they have. So certainty is the main issue, and I believe that the two things that affect all of our businesses when it comes to certainty, the two biggest things that the government is involved in is regulation and the economy. With regulations, it's been very frustrating this year. I think that companies around the nation, companies around the world that follow everything that our country does, is concerned about the regulation that we have. This year alone, this president has put in 219 new regulations at the cost of about $100 million, at least $100 million per regulation this year. I think that right now especially, I mean, I am somebody who believes we've got to cut regulation and get through a lot of the red tape anytime, but certainly this year, when you're looking at jobs, when you're looking at creating certainty, we've got to be looking at cutting regulations. The other issue is, it'll take me a little longer to explain, is the economy. I mean, obviously this is a very complex issue in DC, a lot of wrangling going on in all different aspects of the economic issue, with new CRs, with continuous resolutions. We haven't had a budget in 3 years now. So a lot happening on the economic front from a national perspective, but I think it's very easy. It comes down to three things. Look, I'm a Republican. I believe that we need more revenue. You cannot solve a 14 to 16, now going on a $16 trillion debt without having more revenue. Now, obviously, I believe that hiring employees, getting our private sector moving again, will create more revenue. That is something that can help us out, but I believe that if you're going to have more revenue, which I think is key, we've got to have energy independence. We have to go back into the Gulf. We have to have those oil permits moving again. The same thing that's happening in the Gulf is the same thing that's happening here. Our natural resources across the nation, we need to manage better. We need to utilize. We need to have a long-term plan. But what is happening in Louisiana, I'm talking to my friends on the Natural Resources Committee, are the same thing that's happening here. They had a vibrant economy there. They were self-sustaining. They had businesses coming in, putting new rigs in. They're ready to explore permits that were promised to them that now have sat idle, and many of those rigs are leaving. What is happening to Louisiana on the oil front is the same thing that's happening here with us. No certainty. No certainty for long-term water deliveries. Across the nation, we've got the largest natural gas reserves anywhere in the world. It's natural gas, a clean energy, a clean way to not only be energy independent, but jobs, American jobs, not Democrat jobs or Republican jobs. These are American jobs that make us energy independent, that reduce our energy costs, that allow business to have that certainty, but also have those certainty within that states of the states that have those different natural resources to be able to plan long term and bring in revenue, the revenue that we need to get out of our debt crisis. Same thing here with our timber industry. Now, we've just seen another big fire in Yosemite. It won't be long before we see another big fire here in California. We need to be able to pull out the fuel as we once did, following our timber harvesting plan, utilizing our natural resource, bringing in revenue and jobs, but also bringing revenue and clean energy and at the same time. So whether it's water or timber here locally, or oil in the Gulf, oil in North Dakota, or natural gas, we have the ability to not only be energy independent, but to reduce our cost at the same time. And the number one issue is bring in revenue. To get rid of a $14 to $16 trillion debt, we have to have that type of revenue to do it. Secondly, we've just got to cut wasteful spending. Now, we're cutting a lot of different areas right now. We've made the biggest cuts in our nation's history, but don't be fooled that we've cut all the waste. One of the things that I worked on in Sacramento was getting rid of a lot of the public buildings that we just don't need. Half a dozen golf courses. I mean, I've been trying to sell San Quentin since the time that I went into the state senate. LA Coliseum. I mean, things that are good for, LA Coliseum is great for LA, but how does that affect my community? Why should we be subsidizing it as a state? We've gone through a prison crisis. We continue to see a prison crisis. Why not sell off San Quentin for $2 billion? You could build several prisons or lower our debt here. But from a federal perspective, it's even much bigger. So I chair the Committee on Economic Development, FEMA, but also public buildings. And I'm working directly with the President on a bipartisan bill, much like we did with the BRAC Commission. The Department of Defense had to reevaluate after many, many decades. Do we need all of these different bases around the nation? Are there some that we could close down, with new modern defense? Do we need all of these different bases open? And, knowing every Congress member is going to fight for their own district, we had to take it outside of the Congress for an up or down vote every time that we have these new BRAC proposals that came out. Now, I don't agree with all the closures. I didn't like some of the closures. But ultimately, our nation is in a better place because of it. So taking a look at all of our properties across the nation, just starting off, we had 14,000 properties that were excess properties not being used. The old post office, the very first hearing I had, cost us $6 million a year to maintain. Not counting the amount of opportunity loss, the money that it could be generating. That's across the street from the White House. That's a great piece of property that now that we're actually out there moving it, we've got some of the, Trump is looking at it, we've got Marriott looking at it, Waldorf Astoria. This is a prime piece of real estate that we should have moved a long time ago. But then we need to take a look at post offices across the nation. There was a time we needed a post office on every corner. We don't need a post office on every corner anymore. So taking a look at the different properties that we can sell is a good bipartisan way to cut waste. I think there's a lot of waste out there, and certainly a number of different other ideas, but this is one thing that this freshman is looking at. I chair the committee, and when I go back next week, we will be moving the bill. We've already got floor time on the floor, and again, working with the administration, I would like to give this president a win. Now, obviously, I'm going to get a win in the process, but more than him getting a win or me getting a win, it's about the American people getting a win. It's about cutting waste. It's about showing America that we can, this Congress that has the lowest approval rating of all time, this president that's got the lowest approval rating of all time, can actually work together and get something done. I think that's a positive thing that when we get it done, it will be something that we can be proud of. Because I think that will just open the door to other waste that we can get rid of. And long term, this is a way to reduce the size of government. The same way that you all know in your businesses, how many square foot you need per employee. I know how many square feet I need in my warehouse space to turn pallets and how much I'm going to make in revenue based on that square footage space. We don't have any standards as a federal government. You've got the corner office that wants to have a great view rather than the amount of space that we need per employee. So we need to define how many employees that not only justified by every department, but then how much space do you need based upon that? And really have some transparency and some accountability. So, this not only addresses waste, but I think we'll have the long-term transparency to help us redefine the way that we do government. So, again, I would say that we need more revenue to get through. $16 trillion in debt is huge. We've got to continue to cut wasteful spending, and ultimately we need to make sure we never get in this position again, which is why it was so critical when we voted on the debt ceiling this year that we had a balanced budget amendment in there. It's something that will have long-term impacts to be able to plan our future. And it's the only thing that I have found that will guarantee that we will leave this place in a better place for our kids than what our parents and grandparents left to us. If we're going to get our country back, if we're going to eliminate the debt, not talking about reducing the debt and then maybe it goes back up again in future years, but if we're actually going to eliminate our debt, we have to have the reforms in place to pay it down, to get rid of the wasteful spending, but ultimately we are nowhere, we're not better off unless we get this balanced budget amendment passed through the House and ratified by the states. I think the time to do it is now.